Welcome to the Thriving in the Age of Disruption podcast series. We're getting an inside look at the intersection of technology and education with Ruby Nguyen. Ruby, the founder and CEO of Curieous, has not only pioneered a groundbreaking AI writing app, but has also shaped significant narratives in the EdTech space with her past roles at Elsa and Vietcetera Media. Whether it's hosting popular podcasts like the Vietnam Innovators or a more recent Zero to X podcast show, or speaking at global forums, Ruby's insights are shaping the future of how we learn and interact with technology. Ruby, welcome to Thriving in the Age of Disruption podcast series. I'm really excited that we can have this conversation today. And I thought that it'll be great if you could introduce yourself to our listeners. So take it.
Thank you, Dr. Ramesh. It's such a great opportunity. My name's Ruby Nguyen, and I'm the founder and CEO at a startup called Curieous. Before this, I started my first startup when I was 24, 11 years ago. I made $1 million in revenue in the first year, and then in the third year, we became profitable. After that, I joined another startup called Elsa. It's an AI EdTech that helps people learn to speak English better. And I helped Elsa to grow from early stage to 5 million users in Vietnam. And then after that, I joined a media startup called Vietcetera. And, long story short, I just love entrepreneurship. I love startups. And so this is like my fourth startup, the second startup of my own. And 2 other startups was founded by other people. But I love this journey of entrepreneurship and startup. And so here I am building a new company, starting from actually almost square one today.
Oh, wow. It's really exciting to be with entrepreneurs in the startup journey because it's quite different from an entrepreneur in a more established company. But what I wanted to also share with you was that I started this podcast with the intention to create 2 essential mindsets which are relevant for the VUCA world. And one of them is an entrepreneurial mindset. And the way I define an entrepreneurial mindset is that one is being resourceful, which is essentially you can look at a problem, you can define that. And obviously, if you define it well, it's half the problem solved.
Yes.
And number 2 is about managing uncertainty and taking risks. And the third part is, of course, creating value, not just financial, but it can be non-financial like social impact. And also it's about creating value, not for ourselves only as entrepreneurs, but also for the other stakeholders. So when you look back at your journey, you started really young at 24, right? I envy you, right, in that sense. And you've already have 4 startup experiences. So what had you go and be part of that startup at 24?
To be honest with you, it was an accident. I studied in Singapore and then I came back to Vietnam when I was 23. And one of my friends asked me, hey, you want to join this company and found this company and build it with me? I'm like, okay, why not? So it's like an accident. But a little bit further down, of history, I think we've talked about this on a personal level before. I grew up in an environment where it was quite entrepreneurial. Like my mom was buying things and selling in the markets, and my grandmother did the same thing. When I was in secondary school, I also buy fruits, and then I made it into juices and sell it to people, and I make good income from a summer holiday. So it's kind of like something that was in me, but I didn't recognize it until later on I accidentally put myself on that path. And then I realized that, I actually love this. So it became somewhat destiny and accident that comes together.
Yeah. I like the way you described it. And I can see parallel in my own life as well, because, when I was growing up, I also had to do like giving tuition to people or organizing afternoon tea dances. And then when I thought I wanted to become an entrepreneur, I felt scared because I thought, I was not qualified, and I went and did an MBA. And then I had to unlearn everything I learned there because I became risk averse.
Yeah.
And then finally, I started my first technology company. So I think it was great that you allowed yourself to get into that space accidentally. But I can see a sort of a general theme around your startups that one is that it's in the edutech space, it's in the media space, but more importantly, you've also seemed to have a speciality in increasing the user base. right?
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit more about that and how do these things intersect?
It sounds like accident, but I think also there's some element of intuition and destiny that comes together as well. I just love education because I grew up in a poor environment. And back then, what I was taught was education is something that changed your life. And I brought it to my heart. So I studied really hard. I got a scholarship to go to Singapore and study. And then after that, it changed my life in such a big way, right? I was from a fishing village and now I'm here talking to you. And so I believe in the power of education. And so my first step was in education. And then the second startup that I joined with Elsa, also in education tech, which is an evolution of education because I believe that tech has a power to scale and to make the education more accessible for people.
Right.
And then later on, in terms of media, it's because there's a lot of content and content is also the way that people consume and learn. And so it's a bit of a zigzag, but intuitively, I kind of like find a way to connect the dots. And then later on, now with Curieous, what I'm working on is I'm connecting all these dots together.
And what does Curieous do?
Oh, yes. I forgot about that. Curieous is an app that helps people create quality LinkedIn content so that they can build a personal branding on LinkedIn and attract better career opportunity. So that's what it's doing at the moment. But my vision is actually a lot bigger. My vision is to build a platform for people to share micro knowledge or micro wisdom.
Right.
And so quality LinkedIn content is the way for me to get there because quality LinkedIn content has a lot of knowledge and wisdom and insights from people doing at work. So that's what I'm doing with Curieous. And so it's a combination of education and content and technology that comes together.
The next question I want to ask you is about podcasts. You started off doing the Vietnamese Innovators podcast a few years back. And then now you have your own podcast as well. And what do you see about that? Is that also more in the space of micro content and,
I find it very fulfilling to do creative and content work. Podcast to me is a way for me to learn. So every guest I invite them to my podcast, I learn something really amazing from them. It's a conversation that lasts 1 to 2 hours. And we go into some topic. And then secondly, it's a way for me to network.
Yes.
I'm actually an introvert. I don't like big parties. And every time when I have to go to events, I'm exhausted. Right. And so for an introvert like me, I enjoy that one-on-one connection that go deep. And that's a way for me to build network. And from that network, I have so much opportunities. So some of my investors actually come from being my podcast guest first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then some of the good friends, later on, we become good friends. And it brings me so much opportunities
that you make.
Yes. And I so enjoy it because it's just introvert nature.
Yeah, and as a result, of course, you also contribute to other people.
Yes.
Because they get to hear all these stories and sharing from people.
Yeah.
I want to move on to another aspect of managing disruption. And I call that the crisis-ready mindset. And I define crisis as anything from a small setback to something which can be life-threatening. And generally, as human beings, we sort of don't like change. So when a crisis comes, it's very threatening. Mm-hmm. And some of us could react to it by freezing, and some of us could flee from it, and some of us would fight back. And I wanted you to share with us perhaps, how do you deal with setbacks? And if there is a routine or something that you practice that has actually supported you in building that inner resilience.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I think about managing crisis a lot. So a little bit of my background again.
Yes.
I grew up in a lot of crisis. And so it was kind of like somehow life trained me to be calm. Not really calm. Actually, sometimes I'm not that calm. But to expect that there's crisis happen and then just deal with it. But that was like the early part of my life where I just expect that crisis happen. I just got to deal with it. But everything was very instinctive. Later on, like in my 30s now, I start to develop systems for myself to put in place where I can manage crisis in a way where it's more optimized for my own personal health and other people's around me. But the early parts of my life was just instinctive and it wasn't that great.
Right.
But I had the will to, I was trained, I have the will to go through it.
Right. So actually what you're pointing to is like you had an open mindset like a readiness to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
So you didn't resist it.
I just expect it all the time, especially in startups.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. But then when you say that now you've systems, well, give me an example of a system that you have in place to support you.
Yeah. So things like building really good social network around you. So family that support you and friends who support you and work with people who support you. I think that is so important because when there's crisis, it's not just you that is fighting against the world. It's you and those people behind your back. That is maybe they're not doing anything specifically for you, but just them being behind your back, that emotional support is so important for me. So that's number one. Number two is health. I was very lazy with all this gym and I'm not blessed with physical ability. So I neglected my health for a while when I was in my 20s and I was very ambitious going after all those goals. At one point, I was having a lot of depressing thoughts and I realized that my system is breaking down. Right? So even though I was a strong person, a strong will, and I expect crisis and I can handle crisis, but my system is breaking down. So in my 30s, I focus a lot on like maintaining a very good health, have good nutrition. I go to the gym 3 times a week and lift weight, even though I don't look like that.
Right.
But I do lift weight. The only thing that I'm still not doing quite well right now is having good sleep.
I was going to ask you that question.
Yeah, I'm still bad at it, but I'm working on it. So health and people. And the third thing is just like being self-aware and always work on myself. I think crisis is about you fighting with the world outside, but if inside you're not calm and you're not resourceful and you don't accept yourself for who you are, then it's very hard for you to fight that crisis. So working in with myself and, sometimes face my own darkness, in the crisis, that darkness come, that is important too. So I have those 3 things that is important for me to continue to work on to manage crises.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very insightful. I mean, especially from looking at your health from a total perspective, nutrition, gym, and the mental space. Mm-hmm. And also what I liked was, that whole piece about developing your inner resources and support structure, because that's the system that you need. And sometimes a crisis happens even for someone like ourselves who might be quite versatile and we have developed those systems, is that many things come together.
Yes.
It could be that health thing, it could be a business thing.
Yeah, sometimes when crisis come, they all comes together, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Yes. So it's also learning to expand that resources and the support structure so that we can be versatile during those moments. Okay, let's move on to a new topic. And essentially, you are a very inspiring young leader. You've got so many achievements under your belt. What would be your advice for young people, especially young women?
Oh, this question, I've been thinking about it a lot, but I don't have a specific answer. Can I just get 2 minutes to think?
Yes, sure.
For young women.
Yes.
Okay. I think there's a lot of young women, and this would be the advice I give to my younger self. The world is very confusing for a young woman, right? There's so many noises. There's a lot of tension between different gender, and there's stories about women being still not completely supported in the workplace. So it's very confusing, but I think you must trust your intuition. Right? Because when you're young, you cannot make sense of the whole world. And there's so many noises. And also you don't understand yourself enough as well. But there's something in your intuition that will tell you the next step that you should take. And you got to trust your intuition. And then later part in life, you will be able to connect that dots. But in the early stage in life, it's so confusing. You just got to trust your intuition and follow your dream, right? Having a dream to follow and then follow the intuition, I think that is the most important advice I can give to my younger self.
I want to jump into another question, and it's a little bit about yourself. So where are you in your spiritual journey?
Where am I in my spiritual journey? I don't know where I am, but I can tell you that I'm quite spiritual.
Yes.
I spend a lot of time to think about the individual part of life. In the early years, I spent time studying Buddhism, a lot of time meditation, incorporate those meditation practice into my life, like my work and the way I live my life. So I believe meditation is a practice of self-awareness and mindfulness that can be done in normal thing, like this is actually a meditation between you and me. I feel like living the dream that you have is also a part of being a spiritual person.
Yes.
Trying to help other people, doing things that is more meaningful, not just for yourself, not just for your small community, but also for the world is also a part of being spiritual. I don't have a religion. I don't really want to commit to one religion, but I believe that there's some bigger power than just us human being.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really inspiring. So what you're talking about is integrating these values in terms of how you live your life on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis.
Yeah.
And that you can bring mindfulness to any activity by just being deliberate and conscious of what you're doing. But more importantly, it's also recognizing that we all live like in a system and we're interconnected.
Yeah.
And so you can create value for people. And, you know, one of the things that I've really appreciated in getting to know you is how spontaneous you are in offering to support people, especially me when I had some questions. And, you know, it was not conditional. It was just like, yeah, sure, let me
I
help
enjoy
you.
doing it.
Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah. And I've been helped by so many other people the same way.
Right.
So I want to pay it forward. And if there's great destiny that we work together, and that's fine. But if not, then I'm okay to just let it be in the world, you know?
That's true. There is a saying, right? If you want to go far, you have to go together.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, going together is really the access to all of us as human beings. What do you think about living a simple life, and how would you define a simple life for yourself?
Oh, I'm swinging between sometimes being very simple and sometimes being very complicated.
Oh, okay. Say more.
I realized that to be simple, I got to kind of experience a lot of different things and then curate what I want and then simplify it. In early stage of my life, I would experience, and I still experience or experiment with different fashion style. I like different fashion style, but later on, I already find that, minimalistic kind of style fit me the best. Right. And so I stay with that style, but I still experiment with other style and see if it works for me. So that's the same thing with other things in my life. Favorite restaurant, for example. I'll try a lot of different food and then I'll later on curate the one that I like the best. And it's usually very simple, like a pho place that just sell pho. Right? So the way of living a simple life is to have a diverse experience and then find that simple thing that you like. Same thing with friendships. I make a lot of friends, but then in the end, it's just a few close friends I keep. Same thing with work, right? I do a lot of networking, but in the end, my team only have 4 or 5 people, and I'm very happy with 4 or 5 people. I don't need to have more. If the business require, then I would hire more, but I don't have the urge to go out there and, hey, I have a lot of money, I want to hire more people. I love simplicity, and I love depth, and I love the sophistication and the connection that comes with minimalistic and simple life.
Excellent.
Yeah. But I usually start from like trying many different things first.
So you be open, curious, and then you can curate it to really what works, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. And if you had to pick 3 words to describe thriving, the experience of thriving in life, what would be those 3 words?
Follow your dream.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes. But is that 3 words already?
No. That's one phrase, okay. Will be.
The second one is to trust your intuition.
Nice.
And the third one is to be generous with yourself in the world. Yeah.
People are talking about sustainability, and in our work, we look at sustainability as the ongoing thriving of a living system. And it usually starts with the mindset, because if we are able to look after our body as this living system, right, then we can take this consciousness to other areas of our life. And in your work and in your life, how does sustainability show up?
I think sustainability boiled down to one thing, that is thinking long term. So all of the mistake I made being not sustainable is to think short term. For example, simple things like buying something cheap, right?
Right.
Buying a cheap pair of shoes. It seems to be economical, but it's actually not sustainable, because that pair of shoes will be broken in 6 months or 12 months, while if I invest in a really nice pair of shoes, which costs a lot more in the early days, but later on they last 5-6 years. So if we keep thinking long-term that way, then we'll make a better decision. Same thing with people, for example. One of the common thoughts of startup founders, let's just hire interns. It save a lot of costs. It's cheap, right? $100 a month. But then I realized it's so not sustainable because the interns come in, you have to spend a lot of time teach them how to do the basic work, and then later on they just leave. And then you go into this cycle of changing people, and changing people is really painful. And you just burn out and you get exhausted. And actually the time of a founder is the most expensive time in a company. And so it's just not sustainable either, because we're thinking very short term and thinking of the economical value like that, but we don't think of like the bigger picture and the longer term. And so from that, hiring a short-term intern, now I'm switched to, I still hire interns, but I hire interns with intention to train them and keep them as my employees for a long time. And any employees I hire now, I think about, do I want to work with this person for 5 to 10 years?
Right.
So if I want to work with this person for 5 to 10 years, I know their character, I know their strength and etc., then I'll hire that person. But if someone is really good for whatever reason, but they're only here for like 6 months, 12 months, even 2 years, I don't want to hire that person because it's going to be a turnover and then it's not sustainable. That's how I think about sustainability.
Right. I really find it intriguing that you connected sustainability to long-term thinking and how you joined the dots to even the hiring process as a startup or the kind of choices that we make with the clothes and shoes and whatever that we buy, right? Because that does force us to really go beyond consumerism, just to keep up with the Joneses and to do things, but really to see what's the inner need for that one particular thing that we are going to invest in. What's your mantra in keeping your team motivated and going forward to achieving their goals?
My mantra for keeping my team motivated, actually, I don't actually spend time to keep them motivated. They're already self-motivated. So I hire people who are already self-motivated and they love the mission that we're on. So my mental capacity is about how do we solve the problem in our business rather than trying to keep people motivated.
What are your thoughts on the current Vietnamese startup space?
Oh, okay.
You can contrast that against Singapore too, because I know that you go frequently to Singapore.
Yep. Vietnamese startup space, there's the pros and the cons. The pros is there are a lot of entrepreneurial people. And you can see that when you hear Dr. Ramesh, even someone on the street selling coffee, they're entrepreneurial.
Totally.
What I love about this whole country is that entrepreneurial spirit. And this is what I believe in the future of Vietnam, right? People are so entrepreneurial and very resourceful. We are the country, or we are a generation of entrepreneurs that has very little resources, but we still be able to make something for ourselves. And so that's the beauty of it. The cons are a few things. Number one is a lack of world-class talent. One of the reasons why I keep my team very small is because I couldn't hire more world-class talent. Yeah, and my network is not small. Like I do have a good network to hire. But for example, to hire a world-class engineer or world-class products person is really tough, especially in tech. But the good news is it's changing though, because people are learning and developing very fast. But it's still not fast enough to have that talent supply that countries like US or Singapore has. That talent has been trained and in a world-class level that have already been there for startups to hire. So that's a con. The other cons is the ecosystem has a few matters that hasn't been mature, like the legal infrastructure. For example, for me right now as Curieous, right? For me to raise funding from venture capital, I have to set up a company in Singapore and raise fund from that entity instead of in Vietnam. I want to do it from Vietnam because that's going to save me a lot of time and cost. The legal infrastructure for venture capital investment is not there. And so how do I do it? We have to find a way around, which is very painful and expensive. And there's this capital that is not enough capital to bet on big ideas that has some risk. So capital in this country or in the region right now want to bet on ideas that is
proven,
yes, which is not exactly the early stage venture capital. The later stage, I understand, but the early stage venture capital is not about prove me that you have profit so that I can invest in you. That kind of risk and ambitious and innovative capital that back the startups in the country.
Right. So if at all there's one change that we can see is the way investors are investing, right? Whether it's venture cap or private equity or even angels in taking on projects which are still not, proven. but to actually validate those as ideas and new business models.
There's still a few cases of risks that they're willing to take, but very minimal compared to what I've seen in other places, other ecosystem, like in Silicon Valley, for example. There'll be like big money throwing at an idea, right? That's not going to happen here. And I don't see that it's going to change anytime soon, because recently I've talked to a lot of VCs from small to big firms, even LPs invest in the VCs, and their sentiment has changed. And so the ecosystem is not going to change. That means the challenge for the entrepreneurs is having to be extremely resourceful to be able to fund yourself with very little capital and take the risk that you need to take and build the ideas that you need to build, which I think might be a good training or good challenge.
It will have the entrepreneur be resilient and be sustainable.
Yes, sustainable, exactly, right? There's a lot of criticism over the Silicon Valley model as well. Just like throw big monies at big ideas, and then it got too hype or too much into a bubble, which is not that great either. So,
I wonder whether this is our Asian background. The fact that we are a lot more practical, realistic, and maybe even conservative around these ideas, which don't really make money at some level, right? Do you think it's got to do with that?
Yes and no. I think it's just because it's natural. I see the difference between when I talk to VCs here and I talk to VCs in the US, I see the difference in terms of a culture. At the same time, I also think it's just availability of capital to take risks, right? So if there's more capital to take risks, actually it happens a few years ago when there's SoftBank and other big name that throw a lot of money in the region, and there's some risk taking as well. But I think the culture does play a part on top of the macro factors that affect as well.
That's right. There is far less money now. Yeah, and people are prudent and cautious about where they're investing.
Okay. But can I tell you a secret?
Yes, please.
Because I'm forced to be frugal,
yes,
I actually enjoy this challenge.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely bootstrapping because I still have investors, but the amount is very small. So I have to be very careful and frugal about how I spend money. But because of that challenge, my team think about creative ways to solve problems, which is very resourceful. And I think that is actually a good challenge for us.
Yeah, it's actually a great discipline too. Because often as an entrepreneur, living in today's startup ecosystem where funds were readily available, a lot of people actually don't focus on revenue, bringing in the revenue and being profitable to actually sustain the business. And they are looking for hopefully someone giving them the seed funding to be able to sustain their business. And that's not sustainable in the long run.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you some short, fun questions. And one of that was, you studied in Singapore. What was it that you liked best?
What I like best is that there's so much resources for me to explore any topic that I want to explore. Like if I go into a library, right, there's so many books that I can just hang there, and I can be a bookworm, or documentary films in the library that I can just sit and watch. The National Library of Singapore is amazing, but the library in my school back then was amazing too. And then all the teachers are there and available to give you an answer or a guidance whenever you need. So I think it's the availability of the resources.
Yes, the resources that were there, right? Yeah. And then what was the thing that you hated most about Singapore?
I'm going to get into trouble.
Next time you're not going to get into trouble.
I wouldn't say that I hate, but I think it can be improved, is that the way that people think is a little bit too much of like, within some certain, too much constraints.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it the casualness aspect, or
is the casualness? I don't think casualness is the problem. I just think that there's too much of thinking in the box.
Right. So the fear to move out of that comfort zone and take risks. Yes. Although the entrepreneurship has picked up a fair bit, in the last 10 years, but I think there's still very much a frame in terms of where you operate and how you behave.
And that frame is amazing, right? It works for so many people.
Yes.
It's just for me. I'm a Vietnamese living in Singapore. Sometimes I just feel like it's I like a little bit more chaos because of where I'm from. I like a little bit more risk-taking, a little bit more challenge that is outside of that box.
Well, it used to be the same for me as well, being a Singaporean living in Singapore. And so sometimes that's why I enjoy working abroad, because you get that freedom and the flexibility. Okay, what's your favorite book?
I have a few different categories. So for poetry, I like Honey and Milk by Ruby Kaur.
Right.
She's a very amazing poet that writes a lot about women's topic in a way that is so candid. She tells real story and is so rich in emotion and life experience in that book. And she's inspired me to write a lot of poetry, not in the same style, but in a way where I tell candid stories.
What's your favorite travel destination?
At the moment, it's New York.
Oh, really?
I change this a lot. I mean, like a few years ago was Tokyo. I love food there.
Yes.
But at the moment, it's New York.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do you like about New York?
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's chaotic. There's so much contrast between like first world development and there's also homelessness and shitty train.
Yes.
But what I love the most is the energy of the city that is so vibrant. And so it's a place that attracts the best talents in almost every field. And there's always new thing for you to explore. I'm still very young, so I like to be in a place where it feels so young and vibrant.
That was exactly my experience in the 90s when I was studying at NYU.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah.
I know. But I thought that it had changed, but from what you've described, it still hasn't.
It's still the same city. It's just different generation. It's still the same vibes.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. And, if you could have dinner with anybody in the world, who would that be?
I would have dinner with my dad. Yeah. And he's passed away.
Yes.
So, and he didn't pass away in a way where we have a great connection to kind of have the last dinner, So,
yes.
Yeah.
I
would have the last dinner to tell him he did well.
Yeah, I really got that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
I would like to heal people.
Heal people?
Yeah.
Lovely. What's the best advice you've ever had?
The best advice I ever had is, this is what I take from being a startup founder. In my earlier stage, I really didn't like fundraising. To me, it's a very painful process because you just get a lot of rejections all the time. And one of my friends told me, just suck it up. Right? And I think it's like the best advice. And I take it to what I'm doing now every day. There's so many things in the startup life as a founder that you just don't like it. But like yesterday, I posted something on Facebook, and then some people come in and have very toxic comments. And then I'm like, do I stop doing this? Because I still need to create content to promote my business. But then when my content becomes popular, people come and attack me.
Yes.
And so I told myself, just suck it up, just keep doing it. Yeah, so I think that's the best advice for me at this point in time.
Great.
Yeah.
And have you ever received any bad advice?
Yes, a lot.
Want to share one?
I don't think it's bad advice, but it's just advice that is not right for you. But then you think that, I should take this advice because it's an authority or it's someone very credible that said it. Also, it's about my startup story, right? In the early days, people said that I have to have a technical co-founder to be able to build a tech company. And I'm non-technical, right? I've been in tech company, but I'm not a person who code. I don't know how to code.
Yes.
I know a lot about business, but I just don't know how to do the execution and details of the tech. And so people told me that I need to have a technical co-founder. And I did take that advice. And it didn't end well for me. In other cases, it could be it is good story for other startups, right? Yeah. Having a technical co-founder. It didn't end well for me. I ended up like losing a lot of money, some reputation with some issues as well. I wouldn't want to go into the details, but it was one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in my startup. And so, it's a good advice for other people, but I took that advice a bit naive. If I take that advice in an intelligent way, it would be a co-founder that I've known and worked with for many years. I've seen that person through the ups and downs and the colors and the character through many different phases in life. Then that would be a good advice. But I was a bit naive. I just look at people with, this person have great quality on paper, have some success, that sort of things, and it didn't work. Yeah.
Wow. It just took me back 20 odd years to my own technology company when, we had a very small operations and we were looking to list it. And merchant bankers said that big is beautiful. And so, we were a small team making money. Yeah. And so we went and did 2 M&As, merged and, became like 100+ people. And those mergers didn't last. And it was the worst advice. And I didn't list the company. And I was so regretful about that.
Yep.
But, what do? You learn through the hard way, right?
Yeah, actually, it's great learning. It's such great learning. But I wish it wouldn't be that expensive to learn, Like, there's some learning that we don't have to pay such a high price. And sometimes that high price can actually be detrimental to our company.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think it comes back to earlier that I believe now that I got to trust my intuition. When something is not quite right in my intuition about people, I should trust it instead of just following advice blindly.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and so do I. I do the same as well.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We've come to the end of the formal, interview.
It's been so fun, Dr. Ramesh.
Yeah, me too. I enjoyed it.